everybody. Welcome to Heidbangers. I'm Matty. Tonight I'm joined by Gordon and Neil, as always. And topic for tonight's episode is stress, and in particular stress at work, where we kind of talk through our own experiences, um, maybe some of the initiatives that our employers do or that we've seen, or wherever else the conversation might take us, because we tend not to plan out in as much detail as that. Gordon, how's it going?
Aye, no bad. It's probably an apt subject tonight since I've had an absolute mare of work to do. Aye, apart from that, I'm doing all right. Looking at this Monday, I've got the rest of the week to go work-wise, but we'll get there. So aye, doing not bad, not bad.
You off for the bank holiday?
I found out today that I'm mandatory off Friday and Monday. I never knew.
That's
So I
good.
So
was trying
lucky.
because the guy at work who we split the work with was like, I'm off on Friday and Monday, and I assumed he just took them off, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to, I've got shitloads to do now. When he goes off, I get like double the work, and then it turns out that I'm off and all. So
Happy days.
Aye.
So does that mean you're going to come back to quadruple the work on Tuesday?
Probably, but I'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
That's a Tuesday problem, isn't it?
Uh,
How about you, Neil? How's it going?
I've gone all right. Aye, pretty much the same. Like work's busy in that as well. But I'm not off at the weekend. I am working at. I think if we get the time back, I'm a bit confused. But I think I'm the only person who is. I think even Easter Bunny gets off this weekend. Everybody gets off apart from me. But never mind. There is worse places I could be with a hangover. I cannot think of them, but there probably is. Aye. What about yourself, mate? Are you off for that?
We take a Friday off. I have to go on Monday, just for having appropriate level cover in the business. Or other folk at my level got in there first and took Monday off. So I was last. I got Friday off, but I was too slow off the mark to claim Monday as well. So
You're not fast, you're last.
aye. So I'm on Monday afternoon. But sorry, I didn't mind working the bank holidays and that. Colin on Heidbangers slags me for this because he's like, it's all the lazy folk that like being in over Christmas and that and the bank holidays because that happens. And I'm like, oh, I think if I would class myself as lazy, but I do love those days when nobody else is in. You're like, it's, you just get a chance to clear a load of stuff that you didn't get to otherwise, which
I
is
know, totally. Even just get like
good.
the tunes and that one as well. You just get the headphones on and that, and I just listen to stuff, listen to podcasts. You know, eh?
Aye, I would recommend a
We know
couple.
a couple of good ones, don't we?
Yeah.
Aye.
The reason why I didn't like taking off like the holidays is because everybody else is off. And I feel like it's a waste because everyone's booked, everyone's busy. I much prefer to take days off that no one else is taking off and try and work it that way. I always get. I've got a couple of folk I work with that always take every Easter, Christmas, every holiday that the kids are off or whatever they're off, and I'm like, that's just a waste.
It was always a waste of a holiday. It's like why there's a period in your life as a parent. I know we talked about parenting last week, but you know when you didn't have kids and you have a sick day for work. Sick day for work was
Aye.
brilliant. When you had no
Oh,
responsibility, sick day for work
amazing.
was great. Right, you'd have football manageritis when new game came
Huge.
out. That might catch you for a wee bit.
Wankitis?
Was that?
Wankitis?
Well,
Yeah.
wankitis definitely
Sure had that a few times.
death chronic case of it. You'd have the heart and kidney days as well, wouldn't you? When you didn't have the heart to go in, you couldn't be bothered.
Aye. Aye.
But
How,
then,
how did you phone in sick though? Did you like? I was always do it sitting on my bed, like with the covers, like or with the curtains drawn, and like complete
What are we talking about
like
here?
blackness, like phoning in sick to your work.
we're leading into the stress bit. Don't worry.
I don't know.
I, I,
But it would be like you could be bad, be like, oh, can I come in? I'm no well, and all that. And then, bye.
I had
And you're probably just stressed.
a flatmate who would shove tissue up his nose and that to get the I don't feel well
Sound.
sound.
Put the voice on.
Aye, and I used to work on the other side of that when I was with HSBC, worked on an attendance team, and we would field all the sick calls in the morning. And
I've done that as well. Aye.
you can't like you didn't need to put a voice on. I believe you. Like you work beside us, but your colleague will take your word for it. Like, and if you're at it, we'll find out at some point. But I was never bothered about phoning and having to put on voices or that. But anyway, when you're a parent, this is the point I was making. When you're a parent, sick days are pointless because
yeah.
you can't get peace for a start. Like if the kids are in, it's worse. You're better at work when you're sick as a parent than you are at home. That was my experience of it, and my sickness levels would have fallen off a cliff as my kids were through that age. Like, and I kind of then got out of the habit of taking sick days and everything, right? So, but that was my experience of phoning in sick.
See that voice thing I was talking about. I've had it where I phoned in and I think I was at uni and I was working in like Tesco's or something like that, and the manager was like, "Didn't sound sick."
All right, doctor.
I've got diarrhea. I kind of talk out my sometimes. Like, what is it you want me to sound like? Oh God!
Listen to this.
I could do an episode on the stories that folk would tell you when they were sick. With a guy who would always say he was off with some problem with his boss or his knob, because I think he thought it would be too embarrassing for us to kind of go and like explore it further or anything. But you're like, well, we could have to ask him about it. Do you know, like no in a great level of detail, but just kind of is it affecting your work? Is there anything we can do to support and all this kind of nonsense? But
have you got pictures? For internet,
is it itchy? Is it itchy? Like, aye. Have you ever kind of segue now into the topic? Have you ever had time off of your work with like mental health related illness?
Nah, I have and it wasn't the work that I'm in just now, but I can admit I've always thought they handled it really badly. Like I've been in other places where they support you, but other ones it was very much like you almost felt they wanted rid of me anyway. So by me doing this was like an excuse for them to get rid of me, if that makes sense. But it's hard, like you can't justify it. Do you know what I mean? But it was like I was off, and you get it makes you anxious though when you're off, like your mental health. I don't know if you guys have had it because you're like trying to come. Like there was times I was trying to come back, and they were like, I had to go through occupational health, and then they were like, right, so occupational health. I had a meeting on a Tuesday, and they'll be like, right, we'll get in contact with your boss, and then my boss got in contact with them on the Thursday, and they were like, why have you like phoned in every day to say you're not coming in? I was like, well, I'm waiting on you guys to come back to me. And it was just like you're anxious, just waiting on the phone. You know what I mean? So it's like some companies, it's like handled really badly. Other ones, it's really supportive. But I've had a really bad experience with it. Thankfully, not the company I'm with just now, but I wouldn't wish it upon anybody because it makes you feel worse.
But when I was in my early 20s, I remember being off for like 4 days. It wasn't quite a full week. And I'd seen the doctor because I wasn't quite sure what was up. And they'd said, it sounds like you've got a bit of stress. And when I did my return to work with my boss, who was my best mate as well, he's laughed. It's like, fuck off. And he wouldn't believe me. He was like, I'm not writing that down. Like, he would have put it down on the form. I was like, but that's what the doctor said. Do you know? And he's like, oh, fuck, I'm not putting that. I'll just put sickness and diarrhea. And that's what he wrote on the form, S and D. He's like, you're not you're within the, whatever the triggers were at that point. He just sort of dismissed it out of hand. But my experience as I was older, a couple of jobs back, I was off with depression. I got diagnosed with depression, and it was, I think I was maybe off for like 5 or 6 weeks in total. And my work were brand new with it. Like they kind of just left me alone when I was off. Come in for a coffee. I mean, if you feel up for it, we'll meet you somewhere neutral for a coffee.
I had none of that. Like,
just had a blether. They did like a stress assessment for coming back. So they were like, right, was it work related? Go through all these things. And so there was maybe like a learning for them because I wasn't off with stress. I was off with depression. The two different things. And actually, it wasn't really my work that was at the root of it. So I had to kind of go through a few things that were, I suppose, probably box ticking exercises for them. So they felt that they were doing everything they can to support. But I think that all came from the right place from them. But I don't think they were doing it just to cover their back. I think it felt like they were genuinely bothered about how I was feeling and kind of getting me back to work. And they supported like a phased return and everything. So like half days for a week or 2 weeks, something like that, and then can gradually build up to full hours and full duties.
That's good. Like that's how it should be done. Do you know what I mean? Support you, because then if you've broken your leg, do you know what I mean? It'd be supporting you to come back, make sure that like everything's all right in that, or when you're off and stuff. Are you going to physio? What adjustments would get made when you're back in office and that as well? So it should be the same in mental health. Do you know what I mean? Irrelevant if it's stress that for your work, or no for your work that causes it, but I just remember feeling anxious that everybody was going to be looking at me and stuff, and I felt like really vulnerable in that as well. Do you know what I mean? When you're like coming back, and I went back on the Friday morning, I remember it, and they put me on like a PIP straight away, like a performance improvement plan. Like
For
I went
your
in at 9,
attendance.
aye,
Wow.
and there was other stuff as well that was like, but it was impacting like my performance was already impacted by like my mental like depression, and then the depression was impacting. So I was in like a vicious circle. I went in. I was to go back on a Friday morning. Went back in, and at 11 o'clock they took me in for a meeting. Goes, I were putting in a PIP and just go home for the rest of the day. Aye, and then aye, I remember phoning my wife at the time and saying, I messaged her and I says, can you speak or can you phone? I can you phone me just now? And she was like, she messaged me back saying, you've either won the lottery or you've been sacked. And I was like, well, it's no option. It's no option number one anyway. Like, but I then she was just like, right, let's just. She took a half day. She was like, right, come on, just meet up, and we just blitzed. Like I applied for jobs and I got the one that I applied for one that I got that was like a far better company than the one I was at. But
I've never been. I've never like luckily never been off for stress or depression or anything for work. But I probably should have been, and it's not like I just never felt like I could. I think like my current workplace and probably my last workplace probably could have. I felt like I probably could have, but I've not really had the need. I think it depends on what the stress like where the stress is coming from, right? Like if it's
yeah,
outside the work, it's sometimes good to throw yourself into work as a distraction and yeah, to get away from whatever the stress is. Whereas if you take some, if it's like a family thing or if it's at home or whatever, taking time off work is just going to steer you towards whatever that other thing is. So I can see why people, and I've probably done that. I've used work as a way to get away for the stress, but I've definitely worked in places where I felt like I genuinely couldn't say I need time off because I'm struggling, and there was times where I was struggling.
What
I
stopped you,
remember.
Gordon?
Say again?
What stopped you? Like what was behind that feeling that you couldn't take the time?
Well, mainly because of the way the place I worked at was set up. Like I just didn't think they'd accept it. Like genuinely, just the way. Like maybe that's unfair. Maybe they would have, but they never gave that. They never had anything in place. It was never talked about. They never gave any suggestion that they would accept that as a valid reason for you being off. And you're talking, well, maybe I've seen that. It's probably about 5, 6 years ago I was working in places like that. It's only my last two workplaces because I worked at no currently, but my last place was I worked at Royal London, and they were brilliant for they had mental health first aiders, and they were like really big on it, on making sure that people were all right and supporting you and everything like that. And the management, you had people managers as well as your actual manager in your department, and the people managers were always someone deliberately that wasn't part of your department. Had no idea what it is that you were doing, couldn't be biased towards any of it, and they were just there to support you as a person. So they had a great balance for treating you like a person, no a number on a spreadsheet. I think a lot of people feel that way.
Totally, and that's a big thing. Like, sorry for interrupting, but it's like if you treat people like people, no like a statistic. Do you know what I mean? You're going to get more out of that person as opposed to like just well, that's 8 hours that we've lost, or that's X amount of money that we're it's going to the drain because we're here. But if you treat people as people, then they'll act like people. Do you know what I mean? Treat them like adults, not like adults.
There is a shift, I think, because the last two places, like Royal London's a financial services company, a pensions company and stuff, and then my current work is a financial services investment company, and they're big companies, right? Like two really big companies, and they both have setups that are to help people with mental health issues and make sure there's people available, and there's people and like people that I've worked kind of close with that have went off with stress and stuff like that. And I think there's a lot more awareness. I don't like 10, 15 years ago, big companies, financial service companies, stuff like conglomerates, like they would never like entertain that kind of thing. So I think there is a conscious shift to treating people like people and things like, and I think it's people like Richard Branson and stuff has done a lot for that kind of that kind of setup for these big companies by setting things like unlimited holidays and flexible working and all that kind of stuff, that it's treating people like people, giving them something back, and then they're getting more out of it. Like they're finding, like, you've seen the stats of, like, when people get unlimited holidays, they actually take less holidays a year than they were allocated, because all the time people didn't need 28, 30 holidays a year or whatever you get, maybe 25. They only maybe need 20, but they feel like they have to take it because they're going to lose it. And if you've got flexible working alongside that, you can, like, go to the dentist and then start later rather than taking a half day or taking a full day because it's in the middle of the day and all that kind of stuff. It's just that whole companies treating people like people goes a long way, and it's proven to help. But there's too many companies that are stuck in the dark ages.
See what we've seen with that. I can talk about previous employers where they have, like, a lot of the stuff that you talked about there, Gordon, right? And on the face of it, so if you were coming looking from the outside and saying, what does this company do? That the mental health first aiders, they've got an employee assistance program that, you know, if you're stuck here, there's a hotline you can phone up and you can say, like, I'm not feeling great, and they would put you through to somebody and you'd have a chat about it. The private medical cover that they've got includes a bit for mental health. They'd have a wee section on the internet about it, and you would go in the face of that, all looks great, but the actual culture of the business was totally counter to that, where they would squeeze folk and squeeze folk and squeeze folk.
Like it was just a front.
Aye. So you're like, what we're going to do is, when you break, because you will break, because you can't operate in this environment indefinitely without breaking. But when you do, we'll pretend we're dead caring about it, because we've got all these things here. And I think that's one of, like, my sort of bugbears with employers, and my experience with employers is, you want the people who are driving all these initiatives to understand that actually, if you do it properly and properly buying it, you get all the benefits that you were talking about there, Gordon. Like the actual the payoff for that, and you show that you care for your staff, and folk didn't get stressed out. We've been, like, in a workplace where folk are working maybe a 40-hour week as part of their contract, and then maybe doing another 20 hours overtime a week on top of that. And then the reason they're doing that is to plug gaps with staff, because they'll no hire people they don't want to take the cost on, and they'll go, well, the folk, we want people to have the opportunity to earn money, you know, and have the overtime. And you're thinking, you're actually breaking these folk. You're giving them so much work, they can't complete their day-to-day work in the hours that they've got, so they're having to stay back. Some folk didn't even bother claiming overtime for it. You know, they just feel that it would be wrong to, because they've not got through the work that they've been given, but they've actually been given.
Lucky there's an option. I've worked in many places where you didn't get overtime. You're just expected to do it.
Well, this is the other thing that I have with working, and it's one of the things I try to kind of talk myself into when I start feeling stressed about work, is your work should never expect anything of you over and above what they pay you for, right? It just is a fundamental rule that if they pay you for 40 hours, you should work 40 hours, because none of us will work for a company that doesn't make millions, if not billions of pounds. Why would they not pay you? Why would they not spend 20 quid for you to be in for an extra hour or whatever? They're not going to. Aye, and they rely on this goodwill and this culture that you know, you're no conscientious if you didn't stay, if you didn't start an hour early, if you didn't finish an hour late, if you didn't work through your lunch. It's like that's a black mark against you. You know, some places operate like that, and it really shouldn't be like that. They would drop you like that, like with a click of their fingers, if your department wasn't profitable, or they could automate what you do, or any other thing that would cost save them money. They would have you in a room. They'd say, "Here's a wee letter. They've got X amount of weeks or months pay, but we're not going to hire you anymore because we can do it cheaper." They wouldn't think twice about it.
No, everybody's disposable in a company. Everybody. Like Steve Jobs got sacked. Did he not get fingered for Apple and all that? Like at the start, did he not get punted for Apple?
Did they call him Steve No Job at that point?
No job, aye. But everybody's disposable. Do you know what I mean? And it's a shame. And I think there's not getting too political, but I think like stuff like COVID, people had to force to work from home. So it just became like, I'll put on the laptop earlier, and I'll just like stay behind later. Whereas you maybe wouldn't have done that in the office. And I think Brexit as well, again, we're getting too political, but we've lost so much of the workforce in Britain. Do you know what I mean? And like loads of folk retired on that as well, and they just couldn't replace them.
Mm.
And then it's like, oh, we may as well just keep working and just trying to get as much as we can for the people that we've got, for this less money that we've got as well, because companies are struggling as well. And, you know, like a lot of companies will be struggling to make as much profit as what they would have done before.
Yeah.
There's one way to stop that, and that's for everybody to stop fucking doing it. But it
Mhm.
really gets my goat, because I used to do it. So like it comes with experience and wisdom and workplaces, and you're like, because I did it. I used to work till like 2 in the morning and
Mhm.
like almost sleep in the bloody office and things like
Aye.
that. When I worked for a small agency and stuff, no overtime, nothing. We got pizzas and some
Mhm.
beers, and that was it.
On a
Some
Tuesday.
disco lights, and we had a smoke machine as well, and a slush
Yeah.
machine, so that was not too bad, but it wasn't worth it. And see now, like people that I manage and people that I work with, like I'm constantly moaning at folks saying, don't you work that extra time?
Aye.
Like you can work half an hour, it's up to you, but all you're doing is papering over the cracks of the problem.
Mhm.
Like you are facilitating the issue by doing that. Can you try to be helpful and all the rest of it? But it's no, in the long run, it's no helpful for, and a lot of times actually, if you work in a team and you've got, because I remember this from one of the places I worked. So I worked in an agency, and it was all young, like slightly younger than me, or single folk. There was hardly anybody else that had kids and that were married, and they were all cool to like they'd go drinking like Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, but they would do loads of overtime as well. And
Mhm.
I remember one of the lassies actually having a go at me because I left dead on 5 o'clock. And I was like, my wife works at night. I've got kids. I need to get home, and
Mhm.
I get my work done during the day when I'm contracted to do it. And like I proper fell out with her because,
Mhm.
and it's that kind of attitude. Like I'm getting chastised because I'm going home at the time where I'm contracted to go home because I've got a family, but because you
Mhm.
know you're better than me. And then there's also times where you get one or two people that do it, and they look like the superstars to the
Aye.
management, and it makes, and then everybody else isn't good as them, and it's just
Mhm.
bullshit. And it's just
Aye.
that culture needs to get to fuck. Like we need to
100%.
be basically you're playing into the hands of the rich. That's what
Mhm.
you're doing. They're just taking a piss at you. You're working for free. Didn't get enough. Life's too short to do that. So my opinion to anybody, 5 o'clock, get yourself to fuck.
Totally
Mic drop.
agree. Aye. Totally agree with that. It is, but I think a lot of work stress comes for that sort of culture, really, because you feel, and it's like when you feel guilty for having to ask for time for a dentist appointment or
Aye.
a doctor's appointment or something. Can even like for when you've got your kids are at school, and you maybe need to be away sharp for a parents' night or to watch
Mhm.
a nativity play or whatever it is. And it shouldn't be an uncomfortable conversation to go and ask
Nah.
for that sort of time, but it can be. Folk can get wound up about that kind of thing, and it tends to be
Mhm.
bad managers. Really, is why that happens. If I think good
Nah.
managers didn't allow that, um they create an environment where folk are kind of quite comfortable to ask for time for life, if you like.
Aye. I
But you
always
have,
think as long as people can justify it though, like, so I would be like, oh, I'm going to like come in late on a Wednesday because I've got to take one of the kids to the dentist, but I will make up that time, and you can see it's nothing really happened before that, just so you know, like, right, I'm coming in late. So it's no like you expect it, I suppose, as the employee. But do you know what I mean? You're saying like this is what's going to happen. This is what we'll do to help make that time up. Whereas I've had people just say like, right, I'm coming in late. What for? Because I've got a dentist, and it's like this is like the fourth time I've been to the dentist. This isn't my current work, by the way, just in case anybody's thinking. But do you know what I mean? It's like that. Well, you need to sort of like, you know,
see
so you're
see
just not having
with
people
that
taking the piss.
with that really, right. So I think you'll always get the one or two people that will take the piss, right? But see,
Mm-hmm.
talk about the culture that we're talking about there, right? Where folk habitually stay late or come in early,
Aye.
start early. See, as a manager, see if I've got somebody that's always over the shift. If they want to go to the dentist, go to the dentist. I wouldn't ask them to make the time
Aye, I
back
know.
up or nothing.
No,
Do you know,
no,
I'm like,
no.
we've taken plenty, so you take a
Aye.
wee bit back. And
Case by case basis. I've had that in as well. It'd be like
aye,
a half a day, like just take half a day off for that. Like there's like time. Do you know what I mean? Like you've done loads recently, there you go. And it's like, oh, I've got like family appointments and that, and I just compassionately either no, you need holiday or sick of that, just go for it. But on a case by case basis,
It probably
definitely.
depends on the nature of work that you're doing as well, because I,
Mm-hmm.
I tend to view our work as the work that you do, no by time.
yes,
So it's no like
Mm-hmm.
you need to do 6 hours, 8 hours a day, or whatever. You just need to do the work that you need to do. If you've got a project on, or you've got can you get it done? And if you can't get it done in the time by 5 o'clock, just give me a reason, and then we'll sort it out. It's all good.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Aye.
rather than that rigid 9 to 5,
Mhm.
like you need to get like no, just whatever the work is. Like if you've got to come in at 10 o'clock, so you've got a dentist appointment or 10:30, as long as you've not got any meetings or if you rearrange them, and you can get the work done that you need to get done, you've got in the day,
Mm-hmm.
just go for it.
aye, no bother. So see when you've been in a position where you can feel work starting to stress you out, right? And it could be
Mm-hmm.
the amount of work that you've got to do. It could be the difficulty of the task that you've got to do, or
Yeah.
one of the things I've found, for example, is I've moved roles. So my first proper job, so my first job after school was McDonald's. I worked there for 5 years, kent it inside out by the time I left. Went to HSBC. I was there for 14 years. So you can imagine the knowledge you build up over 14 years. You ken everybody in the
Aye.
building. You ken all the processes, or the different departments, who to go to. And then you start somewhere else and you go and make that move and you realise very quickly you didn't ken anything. And
Mm-hmm.
my experience is that like the sort of the more senior position that you go into, the less training and support you
Aye.
get for the job that you're going into. It's almost a case of there's your laptop,
Aye.
here's the work that needs done, just kind of just crack on with it.
There's an assumption you're going to get it done.
And you're like, fucking, do you know what is it they call it? Imposter syndrome, where
Aye.
you sit and you're thinking, fucking hell, like I don't want to put my hand up and say I don't know what any of this means, because
Aye.
you're frightened that somebody's going to find you out and think, right, this is the wrong person for the job. But at the same
Uh-huh.
time, you sit stressing at it because you're looking going, the fuck am I meant to do with this?
Aye.
I was going to bring in imposter syndrome up, because that I've had that quite a few times, like trip one. So the current job I'm in just now, I didn't mind, like I'm not anybody that's listening to this that I work with. I've probably told a few of them, but I went from the job that I was in at Royal London, and like I was in my team. I wasn't a superstar, but I was well regarded and I was doing really well. And this job came up, and it was this next step up in my career. The current job I'm in just now, I was like, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for it. But I loved working at Royal London. The team that I worked at were
Mm-hmm.
fantastic people. Actually, still miss working with them, to be honest. The work
Aye.
wasn't the most exciting, but it was good, and I was good at it. And it was a gamble, it was a risk, but it was based on next step in my career, more money. You know how it goes. I went into my current job, and I remember I must have been about 4 or 5 days in, so about a week in, getting up from my desk, going to the toilets, going into a cubicle and phoning my wife and almost breaking down in tears, saying I've made a massive mistake. Like I can't do
Mm-hmm.
this. I have no idea what I'm doing. Like I'm asking questions, but I didn't the right questions. Everybody was too busy
Aye.
they were in the middle, like, and it's quite a senior thing. Like you say, Matt, you're expected to just know what you're doing and just run with it. But there was, and like as it normally happens, there's certain processes and systems in place that are very bespoke and unique to that workplace. It's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
no one's going to know any of this unless you've already worked here. If you move to a different department, fine, but there needs to be some level. And it was just unfortunate when I joined, the reason why they needed someone is because they were struggling. So
Mm-hmm.
I came in, they're still struggling. Nobody's got time to sit with me all the time, and you feel like you can't constantly ask because you're like, I'm getting paid a lot of money for this. I'm in a senior position now. I can't be asking every single I can't be asking every 2 minutes. What's
Mm-hmm.
this? What's this? And it just got more and more overwhelming. And I remember like I could barely move my head because my neck was so tense after like
Mm-hmm.
those couple of days. And like I say, I went to the toilet and tears were like rolling down my eye, like because it wasn't like I was sad or anything. It was just the stress and the emotion of like, I've made a fucking massive mistake here. I
Aye.
can't do this job. I have no idea what I'm doing. I didn't ken what to do. I didn't ken who to turn to, what to ask. Like, I miss where I worked before. It was all good. What have I done? And I like, she talked me down. We talked through it, and it got better. Like, in fact, it was only about a couple of weeks later. I was like, oh, "This is cool. This is all good." But it was that, like, it was crippling imposter syndrome, like absolutely crippling. And I know of like what people have said they've had very similar experiences where you just think, I have no idea what I'm doing here. But I think 99.9% of the time, I get there eventually, and I've learned that over the years, and I think most people do. A lot of the time, it's asking the right questions, getting the support that you need, and persevering. And if you can do that, you'll get there. You'll get there eventually. You're more capable of stuff than you think you are. You'll always get there. So it's just keep going. But it is very common to feel like that, because you're, like you say, you're around new people. You don't get anybody in the company. It's just like, it's imagine it's something like joining a new school when you're like really young, or it must be like really similar going to high school, like and you get put into classes with no one else you came from primary school with or something like that, and you're just like, oh, what the fuck. Like, it must be like very, very similar to that experience. If like, I can't remember, but imagine that's what it's like.
Feel like that. I think so if I relate to my experience, because my last job that I went into, I didn't last long in it. So I'd gone in, knew the industry, knew the type of role it was, but the sort of, so it was like a quality assurance role that was going into, and so quality assurance is subjective, right? So some of the stuff that you're doing, you're trying to sort of see like it's some of it's like kind of nuanced on what was the intention behind that word, whether what it was the right word they said, but what was the context of what they said it in. And I found myself in a situation where you're trying to learn the MI system, which was just like a big Excel spreadsheet that didn't quite work properly. So it would, you couldn't rely on it. Like one day you would look at it and it'd tell you, this is your figures. You look at it the next day and it would tell you something different. Somebody might have gone in and edited it, and you wouldn't have any way of going and having like that audit trail. Sometimes it just, I fucking swear, sometimes it just changed things. Like it was the way it was saved down or something like that. Something happened to it, so you couldn't rely on MI. But you would also have like other folk would have an opinion. So you'd have the team I managed would go and assess what they were assessing. They would come back and say, I've got a finding on this call here, right? This, so it was like whole journeys they were doing, finding here, and you go, right, tell me about it, and then you go and say, right, test it, go and ask the questions. Fine, that's great. That goes on a report that you're going to report back to the business. Then that would all be written. It'd go to somebody else, and they'd go, I didn't agree. You go, what? I didn't agree. Right. So then you'd have to kind of go and sit and have that conversation. Say, right, I'll go and have another listen to it. Right, we'll play it back. Get the two people talking to each other. And then somebody else would come in and go, nah, I didn't agree with that either. And it would have changed from 1 to 2 to 3. And you go, well, what the fuck are we saying here then? Like, and you imagine that on every single bit of work that you've got. It was like that, but you knew yourself, so you kind of go, well, I didn't feel confident enough to go and just like make a decision on it and say not, because sometimes it was my boss that was coming in and saying it was wrong. Sometimes it was the person that was taking over from that was that was saying it. And so you've got imposter syndrome already, and then you have this environment. And I clocked very early like that wasn't for me. I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to get to the point where I've figured all this out, because there was things like personality clashes with folk, and you just, everything was just an absolute riot. To be fair, again, good intentions, good, nice people to work with, but I was like, I'm not going to get it, and I made the decision there rather than to get, because I would have ended up off with stress, anxiety, and my confidence was absolutely shattered as well. I was like, I need to go and do something else, look for another job, and fortunately kind of found one before it got to the point where my health was really impacted by it. But that's where it was headed, because it was awful.
That's a shame that
you experienced the imposter syndrome.
I like quite a lot. But I'm sort of like similar to what Matty was saying. I went for a job. I'll not say where it was, but the part of it was like in an office where It was really weird actually. The structure, there was maybe like 7 or 8 of us that worked in this office, and the majority of us were like managers. It was really like top heavy that way. But I went there, and two of the people who never got my job were like working underneath me, and I just never got any help or assistance for them. Do you know what I mean? It was like blatantly obvious. They were like, there was stuff about Sage, and like they were having to show me Sage, and they like showed me it once, and I'd never used it before. They never showed me it again. I was like, I've not got a clue what I'm doing here, and it was just like, it was hard to get it with the support. And I've been in places before where you feel that, but you get the support you need. But there, it was like, nah, we're hanging you out to dry. Like, hey, this is it. We we've interviewed you, and you've been interviewed by a company. You got the job ahead of us. Like, do you know what I mean? We're not going to help you. And it was horrible, like horrible. And it was like a weird sort of wee tiny office, like room 7 or 8 of us, and it was just like, oh, I hate this. Like, hey, like you just felt bad, like asking for like, because it was that environment where like it's all quiet and that we've got radio on in the background, so everybody can hear what everybody else is saying. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh, nah. And it was, you just end up getting, I was just getting blamed for stuff that I blatantly didn't do. And one of them was like, I can't say too much about what the company was, but there was like stuff we had to keep in a safe. So we had a key on the wall to open a door,
Was it a
which
bank, Neil?
then
Was it a bank?
it wasn't a bank, but honestly, I can't even
Dodgy
help.
bookies.
No, I wish. But there was a key to open a cupboard, to open another door, to open a safe. And the key, one of the final key went missing, and they were trying to blame it on me. And I was like, it's definitely not me. It was the manager, but they were refusing to take blame for it. They had to go looking for it, and then they couldn't get it. And but it's just it was a horrible atmosphere. Didn't like it at all. Didn't like it
See,
at all.
I think it can be underestimated how much benefit you get from good colleagues.
Totally.
Like, genuinely can. I've been really lucky to, like most places I've worked with just fantastic people that end up calling friends. Like it cannot be underestimated. And just as like the opposite of that toxic environment where colleagues were actually just trying to get one up on you and screw you over is like, I just, unless someone at management deals with that and weeds it all out, you can't come back for that. I think like when people are hell bent on that, I think it just ruins a workplace. No matter how hard you try, they're just not going to let you. And it's a team. Like, on a lot of places, it's a team game. I think people underestimate that. Like office
totally.
work for sure is definitely a team game.
I think that's a brilliant point that you make, Gordon. So I can just call on previous experience. When I left HSBC, I joined Sky. Sky's like just 10-minute walk for the house, 3 minutes in the car, if that. Ideal location. Really wanted to work there because it was a handy, good benefits, etc. Really nice people, but really, really cliquey. And I found it really difficult to make friends. The culture was completely different. Like it was, so HSBC was like when I started, I didn't get to tell off because I had the wrong colour of shirt on. Do you know, it was like one of these ones you weren't allowed to. They'd relaxed over the years, but you can swear. Your dress had to be, just so. The standards were so high, but there was like zero tolerance for anything inappropriate, like zero tolerance. And if anything happened, then it was dealt with very, very quickly, right? Which is fine if that's the environment you're in. Everybody's used to it. It's not like I never ever felt that was like a bad environment. When I went to Sky, it was like the Wild West. Like honestly, the amount of stuff that folk were up to, like blatantly up to, they just did not. It felt like they did not give a fuck, right? But it was just a different culture, and then so it took me like a while to break into it. And I remember we had to do. Do you ever have to do like 360 feedback? What do they call it? You get all your peers to get your feedback, right? So you'll have like a number of questions that you go out and you take it for your review. And I remember it was maybe about, I can't if it was as much as a year in, but I did it maybe 9 months, something like that. I did it, and I got the comments back, and still remember it. Somebody says, "Mr. Vanilla." That's what they put in, Mr. Vanilla. Got nothing about you. And I was like, "Fucking hell, how have I come across like that?" Because I didn't. I mean, folk maybe disagree. Like on enough podcasts, folk might have formed their own opinion, but I didn't feel like that myself. And I remember sitting down with my boss and discussing it with her, and saying, "Look, I've got this." And the thing is, I didn't feel that that's who I am, but I feel that this is completely fair in what they've written. So the person's written it. I think that's a genuine reflection of at how I am. And she's like, right, so what? How would you get past it? I was like, well, I need to go and kind of make friends. She's like, right, for the next however many months, I don't want to see you in your module with your team. Because I've spent all my time with my team trying to kind of drive them, and I had a great relationship with them, but it was like a boss team relationship.
Aye.
So you go out with your peers, I want you away getting coffees with people, I want you just going standing and chatting, I want you doing nothing but try to build up relationships with folk and see the difference that made to how I felt at work, because I'd go in and do the job and it was all right, but I was just getting through it. It wasn't enjoying it at all. It was just somewhere to go through the day to earn money.
Aye.
And the difference it made when I started kind of going, getting to know the folk that I work beside and being able to have a laugh and show like a bit of me, uh, and having it was like you had allies, and it's like Joe, your team will sometimes do something that pisses you off, right? Or your colleagues will do something that pisses you off. That's normal, right? And same as family members do it and all the rest of it. Friends will do it. See, having somebody to go, you want to grab a coffee, and fucking and unload and say this fucking bastard's done this, and I can't believe it. We're already up against it, and then they've decided to do this, and then somebody else to go, oh, that's shite, that's shite. Have you thought about doing this? And you go, oh, aye, I'll go and do that. And then having that ally that's got your back that you can just unload to makes a world of difference to how you go about work. And I think that's more difficult when you go into the more senior roles to build those relationships, because
Totally.
like if you go in, like when I went in HSBC, I was on the phone, had a team of 12, 14 folk round about me, they're all doing the same job, and you'd all come through training with each other, you all go into the piss with each other. It didn't matter if you made an arse of yourself in front of your teammate, because the next week they'd make an arse of themselves. But then when you were their manager, you couldn't really go and
No.
do that. Like your standards have to be different, do you know, or that was how it felt at the time.
You have to be a role model as well, eh? Like, and it is that thing where like we're in situations and it's like you justify it by saying, "Listen, I'm here to make decisions. I'm not here to make friends." Do you know what I mean? And
Aye.
it's like a brutal thing to say, but there is a thin line. And for me, I would always like try and build rapport, and it's like whatever level I've worked at, because it's like you're working with people, like you're spending like more time with the folk that you work with than like your family and that outside of work sometimes. You know what I mean? And I would be like, I really need to like just because I'm a fountain of useless information. So be speaking to folk, you know, in the basketball, it's like, oh, I've got a bit of an idea about basketball, Formula One, or even just like telly and stuff like that. You just start picking it up, and then a couple of days later, you ask them, "How did you watch Love Island and stuff like that?" And I might not have watched it, but you read about it in the paper or whatever, and then you're sort of like bring them in. But is that thing? But I know like the further up you get, it is sometimes it's difficult because you need to watch that people don't start taking advantage of like the friendly side of your nature, and like I'll just do this because like Matty's my pal and we're going to the pub and all that later on as well. So
I agree. It's more difficult, but it's not impossible.
Yeah.
Like so,
Aye.
I don't know if I'm just good at it or it's just a so I've thought about this a few times actually, because I'm in a senior role and I'm like anybody can speak to me and I'll talk a lot of shite to anybody in the office, and I'm quite pally. Like I get like nobody's any problem with inviting me out or anything like that. I'll say some stuff that's like like on the edge when you're at work, and like no, not anything like bad, but obviously like some innuendo or something like that. You know what I mean? Like make a joke or whatever. And my manager's like that as well. And then his manager, who's like the head of like a department with 200, 300 folk, like I get to train him sometimes in that, and we're like talking about music, and like he's saying, "Oh, I listen to your podcast and all that, and we'll do this and we'll do that, and go to this gig and that, and then we should go to a gig together and stuff." And it's like I just didn't see any problem, like, and that's quite like unique in a financial services company as well. It's almost like a mini agency inside there. Like, it'll depend what department you work in. It depends like who your manager is and all the rest of it, but it does work. And I think the way being that way and being friendly, and being open and honest and having a bit of a laugh and having a bit of banter can get more out of people because you're approachable and but there is that sometimes I think there is certain people, and see this is what it depends, because there's certain people that I think I'm pretty sure don't take me as seriously as they should take me
Aye,
when
aye.
it comes to serious work matters. And I can tell, and I'm like, see, like I've went potentially too far that way with the friendship side of stuff. Like, I need you to just do this. But as long like there's ways of getting around that. So like it's happened, and I've just kind of went like it's managing to flick that switch or draw that line at a certain time and doing it in a constructive way and no destructive way. Like rather than just going, I'm your boss and you better do that. When you've just been their pal 2 minutes ago, you've got to go, look, come having a laugh and stuff like that, but seriously, I need you to do this because X, Y, and Z. It's having that balance, but it is really difficult, and it depends on the person you're talking to, because there's certain people, it doesn't matter who, like, how I act or how daft I be or whatever like that, they will take me seriously because I know what I'm doing. They know that I'm going to give them the right answer. But there's some people that just go like, he's a bit of a joker, I'm not going to take what he's saying seriously. So it is definitely more difficult when you're in those senior positions, but it's no impossible. And I think if you get that balance right, I think that's a perfect work environment rather than being, because I've worked with people that really close knit team. You've got a manager, and he's actively said, "No, I can't come out drinking with you because we'll get too close, and then that kind of breaks the barrier. And I'm your manager, and I can't do that because I'm your manager." And it's like, fuck off, me. Like, you're no better than me. Like, you're just a guy that's earning a slightly more, and you make some of the decisions. Like, we're all working together. Just come out for a drink. It doesn't have to be that stiff. It doesn't have to be that cut and dry. So, it's just it's more difficult, but I think it is doable. I was going to ask, because we talked about being in jobs quite a lot, finding jobs and going through that experience. Like, I don't think there's much more. It depends what part of your life you're in, right? But there's no much more stressful things. Because I've been made redundant twice. It's been one of the most horrendous experiences in my life. First time, my wee one was 6 months old. We had our wedding booked in 3 months' time, and I got made redundant, and it came out of nowhere. No one said anything. I just got took into a meeting, and it turns out they had knew for about 3 months that were going to make me redundant, but none of the bastards had a spine to tell me, and they were all arguing with each other who was going to tell me. And they could have told me 3 months before. And I went into the meeting and I went, right, see you later. Packed up my desk and left like within 5 minutes. And I remember going through the door, went home early, my wife's standing there, and I just burst out greeting. And I'm really sorry, I'm so sorry, what we got to do. And I absolute panic. Like, what are we going to do? I'm not going to be able to get a job again, what the hell? But every single time I've managed to get a better job within like a week or 2 weeks. But see that stress, that experience,
horrible,
looking for a job, I think is absolutely, it's one of the worst. It is definitely worst. I don't know if you've had experiences like that.
Nah, totally. And I think it's like when you're looking for a job, like if you're properly looking for a job, it's like a full-time job in itself. And it is like, it's horrible. And I remember, can I say the company I went for an interview with? It was like horrific. It was Standard Life, but it was and it was recruitment agencies, like they just tell you what they want to tell you. But I'd gone for it, I'd applied for it in the recruitment agency. Like, listen, they're after like qualifications. You've not got those qualifications, but don't worry, we think you're going to be suitable. And as soon as they're saying that, they're just like, oh, nah, this is it. So it was I remember it was a Friday morning. It was like down Dundas Street way. And I was in my suit and it just started pouring with rain and I had an umbrella or anything like that. I sat in a bus shelter and I got absolutely drenched. Went there, was dressed down Friday, and two folk interviewed me and it was like bad cop, even badder cop. And one of the guys was like constantly on his mobile phone, just scrolling. And it was supposed to last for no longer than an hour. It lasted for an hour and 20 minutes. And one of the boys on his phone, he looked up at me at one point and he goes, do you know what? Your CV screams lack of ambition. And I was like, oh, this is horrible. Like,
Really?
this is horrible. I never got a job, but I just remember the whole experience of like thinking I was really, because I'm always like on early for stuff like that. And I was like in the bus stop thinking, I need to wait for this downpour to stop and I'm going to be late. And I was drenched. They're all just in their jeans and like trainers and t-shirts and that. The boy's just on his phone. And I could have said anything at some point. He wasn't paying attention, eh? because he was like too worried about my lack of ambition on my CV.
I tell you how he would be getting your behaviour speaks a lack of class. And thank you very much for your time. I don't want your job. See you later. Aye, fucking hell, what a
You,
prick.
Matt, how have you found it if you've been looking
So
for a job?
I've been lucky that I've never been made redundant. I've been sort of like near misses, like say HSBC. There was like 3 or 4 times where there was rounds of redundancy where I'd been sort of fortunate enough to have met the performance threshold for the folk that they wanted to keep, which is it sounds like that's like a good thing, but see when you're seeing your mates going
Aye.
and you just get moved to a job that you don't want to do, and that happens a couple of times, and eventually you end up in a row going, what am I doing here? And we're like folk that I've never worked with before, a job that I've never picked to do, and I'm kind of here because of nowhere else to put me. Kind of that's where it ended up with HSBC. So the times where I've looked for a job have either been sort of opportunistic where something's come up and I've thought somebody's maybe given me the nod, so like the role that I'm in now, somebody gave me the nod for it and said you should apply, you'd be suitable for it. So I went for it. That happened when I went to Aegon as well. But other times where I've looked, it's been because I wanted to get out of where I was. I always have the sort of the view that I didn't want to be the person that's sitting about the office moaning about how shite everything is.
Aye,
Because
constantly, year after year after year.
they just bring everybody down, you know.
Aye.
And you've seen them and you've worked beside them, and I always think, like, see, when I feel myself getting that way, it's time to go and go do something else and take control of that situation. So when I've looked for jobs in that, I find that difficult because you're looking at, you want something different enough for what you're doing that you're not going to feel the same way about it. But at the same time, it has to be close enough to what you're doing for you to have the skills and the experience, the skills and experience to kind of go and sit through an interview for it, which is difficult because I know like you've got skills that are cross transferable, transferable skills. But when you're looking, you're like, oh, that job looks quite good. And then you go through it and you're going, I could do that, I could do that, I could do that. And then you go and chuck your app in. And like, I remember going for a job interview at a place and I walked in and it just felt exactly like the place I was leaving. And within minutes, I knew I really wanted to do it. So I kind of went through the interview as quickly as I could, thanked them for their time, and just sort of said to them, listen, no, I didn't really think I'll be taking this if you. I don't think you will offer me it, but I don't think I'll take it if you do. One of these sort of conversations, and yeah, it is stressful, and I think it's nerve wracking making that move. Like you said, Gordon, you worry about you're making a mistake, and you feel like it's the right thing to do for your career. It's maybe a bit more money, a bit better status in terms of the job profile. But you do think eventually, I think eventually you kind of at a point where I go, I can't do this. You know, this is beyond my capabilities. If I'd have got, you have like an agency, sometimes will headhunt you and say like, would you be interested in this role? I had one recently where they sent me the profile. And I was like, listen, if you looked at my CV, I could do all those things, but I know if I went in that job very quickly, I would be sinking. So, I'm not interested. Thanks for the contact, but nah. It's not a fun thing, job hunting. Not at all. There's no aspect of it that's nice. Although perversely, I do quite enjoy an interview. I'm quite good at them. I quite like that part. I think like if you put me in front of somebody to go for a job or an assessment centre, I'd be like, fucking bother. Do that part fine.
I can blag interviews really well and stuff like that. And I'll always have a list of questions at the end that like to ask in that as well. I didn't freeze or anything like that, but I quite like it. I like being interviewed and interview.
It's always good to put the people that you like. That's one of a top tip. I think we've talked about this before on one of the group chats or something like that. But if you're being interviewed, make sure that you ask questions of the interviewer. And put them on the back foot, because I think it's important to note, and this is what I've always, and if you go in with that, there's levels, right? You don't want to be overconfident, but you've got to show a confidence. And I think 9 times out of 10, people are more capable. We've got to this. They're more capable than they think they are, but there's a lot of the time there's a reason why they're interviewing you, because they want you as well. They want to fill the role. They want the person. Not always. If somebody's sitting on their phone and no fucking bothered, obviously there's certain
interesting Friday.
But I think you've got to remember that you're interviewing them as
Aye,
well, all
absolutely.
the time.
It's a two-way thing, isn't it? It's no,
Aye.
you're no on show for them.
Exactly, and it depends how far you go in your career, right? Like it depends on the type of work you do in your career and stuff. Like I've been lucky enough that I've got the experience and skills for the last like 5 years to put me like as a front runner for most jobs that I would go for. So I know you have that wee bit extra confidence. But I think if you have that confidence, anyway, because I've seen it with my work, we bring in graduates all the time. So young people that have just come out of uni or college or even sometimes high school, and they put them in there to see how they're getting on. And the ones that go on to succeed are the ones that come in and show the confidence. There's been ones that like, they're just young and that they just kind of like they're all sheepish and they'll just do exactly as they're told and don't really speak to anybody and they never really go anywhere. And it's like it's no being there's no like they're going like these rubbish get rid of them for doing a good job, obviously to take consideration. But the ones that go on to like actually go from being a graduate to being like a mid-level position, not even like a junior level position. There's the ones that done it is the ones that show that confidence to say that I can do this job, like and I can do it well, and I can fit in here. And just because I'm young doesn't mean there's a limitation to my skills. So it's like the same with anything. Like if you've got enough confidence in getting that balance, like you can do really well. Right. Work.
I was just going to say that that's very briefly that Standard Life interview wasn't the worst one. The very worst one I had was British Gas on an open day on a Saturday, and it was like just loads of folk that were there that you seen kicking about Edinburgh that just didn't look like like faces you recognise as like what am I doing here on a Saturday? And one part of the interview was there was like role plays and all that stuff. But at one point it was through a recruitment agency as well. I think I hate recruitment agencies, but guy from British Gas, woman for the recruitment agency, both interviewed me. So she was like, she asked me a question and says, "Okay, Neil, give us an example of a time." And I can't remember what she says. So I just like started talking. And she went, "Right, to stop you there, you interrupted me when I was going to say the question." So she said the whole question. I says, "Right, so you interrupted me what I was going to say because I know what the answer I'm going to give was because what your question was." And for then on, it was just like a free for all between the both of us. And it got to the point at the end of the interview, the guy was like, he came out of the room and he goes, "Are you all right?" I went, "I'm all right." And he goes, "I thought she was going to fight you, just because we both were arguing with each other. I never got the job, like, but she's just like, you're being rude for interrupting." So I was like, "Well, you're being rude for interrupting me." And it's just like, down a little bit, but I never got that job. But I think I'm probably the only person in Edinburgh that's never worked for British Gas.
No, British Gas.
No,
Nah,
oh no.
never.
He's never, so this is it.
Ken folk who did, right enough, but
Uh,
When they work for anything, it's got British in the name.
uh.
Too political, show my colours there. But interviews are an interesting one, like because I've never been interviewed by this person, but there's a guy that was a manager in one of the places I worked at. He used to do. Have you heard of the Duplo test? You know, like the
No.
Duplo, like the kids like Lego, like the big
Uh-huh.
blocks. You must have read it in one of these wanky books that you know, like tell you that you've got to do this and do that in a certain way, and this makes you some sort of Elon Musk, Steve Jobs type. And I would basically get folk in for an interview, and he would give them like Duplo bricks. Like here's 10 Duplo bricks, build something, and whatever you build in like 30 seconds will tell me what type of person you are, and all this. And it was just an absolute nonsense. And this is like the point I'm getting to is that there's so many people use interviews as a power trip.
aye.
Oh, why?
And it was
Totally.
so that he was actually using the interviews to be like, if he listens to this, I definitely give a shit as well. He was all right. He was all right. He was using it to stroke his ego to go, "I'm this cool guy, and here's some Duplo, and like I'm going to be able to tell what type of person you are by." And it's just things like that guy on his phone that you were talking about, Neil. And I've had an interview to a guy, asked me a question, I gave him the answer, and I know the answer was right. And still to this day it was right. And I was halfway through telling it and giving the answer, and he went, "If you didn't know the answer, just say." I was like, "What?" And like I was at that point, like even through the interview, I one word answered the rest of it because I was like, "I don't want to work here." Like, and I think that's another important thing as well is like if you get those alarm bells, and I know there's pressure and you need a job and all that kind of stuff. Like sometimes it's not worth it. Like just didn't bother. Find someone else that's going to appreciate you, because if you're off to that start on an interview, what's it going to be like when you're working there?
That's it. take the signs.
Right.
Aye, so I think that feels like a kind of natural point for us to wrap up for this week. Thanks very much for listening, Neil, Gordon, me. Thank you very much for our time.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Isn't that just the way? What's that you say?